Consider this, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bale Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome back to the University of Nebraska Omaha campus. The man I have on my show this week has perhaps one of the most thankless jobs in the state. Well, I suppose if you took every other county assessor, they probably also have the most thankless jobs in the state. My guest is Roger Morrissey, the Douglas County assessor. And this man is, well, you're very popular and unpopular at the same time.
Right, famous and infamous.
Well, you have probably the most popular website that you've instituted in the state of Nebraska, one of the most.
We do, and that's surprising. You know, as an appraiser on the private side, I was starting to use a lot of technology, digital cameras, sketch programs, computerized forms, and I thought, you know, that's something the government should have too.
And so when you were running in 1998 for your first shot at county assessor, you were thinking, I'd like to modernize.
Yeah, it's something that needed to be done, and it was going to make the office more taxpayer friendly. And there's a lot of mystique, I think, as far as property values go and as far as the assessment goes. So it ought to be open. People ought to be able to go up and down their street. They shouldn't have to hire an attorney. They shouldn't have to hire an appraiser to get an idea what their valuation is. And it's public information, it's public record, and we've made it accessible, those records, through the internet.
Let's go back a bit. You were elected in 98 and you took office in 99 and you did campaign trying to modernize the office. That was one of the things that you had on your plate almost immediately, is trying to take 1984, 86 software that was just, I mean, I can't even imagine if I even in 1999 if I had 1984 software.
Right, the office had
inadequate it would be.
Yeah, they had a computerized mass appraisal system that was purchased by the county in '68 and updated in '85. And then even on the property record cards, everything was pretty much by the number 2 pencil. And the county wasn't taking advantage even of the old system. So it was something that I knew was available. I mean, banks nowadays use automated valuation models to take a look at valuations. If you go in for a second mortgage,
yeah,
they're going to do something that's automated. So technology has really evolved an awful lot in the last 10, 15 years, and the county wasn't keeping up with it, quite candidly.
So if you marry that fact, and I'm not laying blame, but if you marry that fact, and finances played a part in it, and the ups and downs of the budget woes, but when you marry that fact with the fact that Douglas County in particular has always been at the aim of, in the sights of the gun of state tax equalizers, and what is it, the TERC, the Tax
Equalization and Review Commission.
Yeah, it used to have a different name. But
right, it used to be the Board of Equalization, State Board of Equalization.
But they have been concerned for some time, as have the taxpayers. I mean, that's really spawned it, that that everybody in the state's property is, in this heavily property tax state, is valued at a minimum of, now it's 92% of market value in
right.
essence.
State statute says between 92 and 100% of value, and here again that's an average over the county, the real estate market being dynamic and not static. Technology, though, Carol, has kind of been a blessing and a curse, because it's a blessing where we can look at it here individually, we can use it as far as the county goes, but the state also has technology to grade the various counties. So they are pushing real heavy that all counties keep within that state mandated and state statute realm. So our report card is, they take technology and use it on their side also.
So you come into office, you kind of get charted on this course to make all property tax valuations and tax bills readily accessible with a couple of clicks and points, and at the same time the state is coming down on Douglas County and saying, you know, we're going to raise across the board the residential properties, and then we're going to, the next year they came back and said we're going to raise the commercial properties, doing that because they felt that this guy that just walked in the door, and I'm not trying to make you a pathetic, you know, pitiful figure, but this guy that basically just walked in the door represents a county that hasn't done its job.
Right. I wasn't in office 120 days, and I was down before that Turk board to show cause why they shouldn't raise across the board residential property 6 or 8%. And us property owners in Douglas County know that that happened. They did slap our hand and raise it. And the following year, I was back again on commercial property, and they raised commercial property 5%.
Did you make the argument, in fact, I'm sure you did, I know you did, that if you raise an unequally high one and an unequally low one, the same amount, you still end up with the same inequality?
Exactly. My contention is all you did is compound the inequity by doing that we were working to take advantage of technology, that I was giving additional training to our appraisers so they could all become state licensed and we do a more professional job, that we'd be more open as far as records go, that we update our records and we have good county records, and it all went for naught. I might add though, this year
you won one.
We won one. So I'm learning a little more of how to argue there. I think with some experience comes some knowledge, and they were treating Douglas County different than some of the other counties.
Let's get to that in a second, but the upshot then of these first two rulings that raised across the board, the residential and the commercial, then everybody still has to wait for you to get all those things loaded in the computer and to sort of get yourself to the point where then you can attack the entire county.
Well, there we can be fair, not necessarily attack.
I mean, attack the job of really trying to do a more thorough job, on homes in relation to those that hadn't. And you told me that when you came in, you had like a printout, like about 3/4 of an inch thick, just one line per property of things that hadn't been reappraised some of them since
1992, and some of those went back as far as 1984. So when that happens, we all know property's been good in Douglas County. The last couple of years, we've been a little bit of a dip just because of the economy, but interest rates have helped us maintain and go up a little bit.
And we're even going up now because of the demand.
But we all know that property raised in value since 84 to 99 or 92 to 99. And so what happens is when the county wasn't raising those values that were raised were subsidizing other property owners. And that's where we still see in neighborhoods where we go in where we're low on the assessments, we see a big spike. I want to get away from the spike where we can look at it every year. People have argued this year in some neighborhoods, no way could property have gone up 40% or 60%. And in reality, what had happened is they were underassessed, and other neighborhoods were picking up and subsidizing their fair share. So to get the playing field level between neighborhoods and between residential and commercial properties, we have to take advantage of that technology, and we have to make sure our records are accurate.
It's quite a shock, though, when you do go in and to use the word that is accurate, is try to equalize the property value so that people pay fair share of taxes. In fact, we just recently completed the process where people went through the process of filing a protest about their taxes, and right now they're in the midst of finding out whether their protest is accepted or rejected. Now this is really, in a sense, because of the access of finding all comparable property values in your neighborhood on the internet, this is really probably the most democratic that this process has been. I mean, we've always wanted to think it was democratic, yet appraisers going in and doing it fair, but if it wasn't all done equally, with equal ardency in each neighborhood, for lack of staff or money or whatever, it wasn't democratic.
Right, and what makes this a good process is, when we're dealing with 191,000 parcels, and there are going to be some mistakes in mass appraisal. So if somebody brings in a purchase contract or brings in during the protest period, I've got a structural problem, or I've got a condition problem with my house that you've got it rated as average, and we really are fair, come take a look on the inside. It helps us get our records right, and that we're fair to those that we made a mistake on. And with that many properties, we're going to be wrong on a couple of them.
What amazes me is that you are still the happy Roger Morrissey I knew before you became county assessor. I mean, this This is what's happened in the first 5 years of your taking on this job. For a combination of factors, was certainly a challenge, I must say, a challenge that probably spurred you to, even though you were going to make these changes, kind of just forced your hand a little. And we all need that once in a while to sort of get where we want to be.
Right, and I think that's it. The challenge is one of the words. I knew that I was taking on a difficult task.
A dinosaur?
A dinosaur,
Yeah.
But maybe it was a little more complex than I thought coming in. And you know, people say, well, why would you even want the job? And I say,
said that to you.
I know you have, Carol, but I throw it back to you. I know you're involved in the community. You're involved in a lot of different activities. You know, people are in the PTA, people get involved on their school board, people get involved with United. I mean, we all take on and say, okay, I've got some talent here that I'm going to give back. And you know, it sounds corny when a politician says it, or somebody that's in elected office, but let's look around the whole community. People get involved all the time and say, I've got some talent that I can help out and make this right, and that's all I'm doing.
Okay, now tell the people your other answer. The one about you volunteering?
Oh yeah, well, I say the other thing is well, for a guy that volunteered for Vietnam, it's probably not surprising that the guy would go ahead and volunteer for the assessor's office too. So, and maybe it's my Irish heritage that we just go charge ahead without thinking and weighing all the opportunities.
A little self-deprecating humor there.
Right.
When you decided to go in and you know, make this stuff available publicly, and I'm sure other counties do this, it was still kind of an awesome thing. I remember the news stories and particularly the TV stories and I'm going, even though I knew in my mind's eye and how much I do work on a computer and the varied number of things, that it was entirely possible, although it took an incredible amount of inputting, incredible number of man hours,
right.
That, you know, it was doable, but to actually see it, and that first few weeks, I think people were as in awe and were checking out how many hits. I mean, you were knocked offline. You took an incredible number of hits.
Yeah, we took a couple million hits just the first 10 days that we were on, and it's interesting because we previewed it live at a commercial real estate workshop that had about 200 real estate brokers, attorneys, etc. And at break, I walked out and I heard one guy on the phone saying, "He did it. Here's the web page. Go to it now." He's calling back to his office.
They were already.
He did what he said he's going to do, and look and see what we can get on the internet now.
And so that has made it easier for. Actually, it's got to be one of the. You know, they always talk in the economic world, productivity.
Right.
You probably not only increased the productivity of your office, but the productivity of, well, how many parcels of land, at least that many people in the county who've been concerned about their taxes. And every hit, we should say, is if I'm checking out my neighbor, that's one hit. My neighbor on the other side, that's another hit. But still, the ability to not physically have to make phone calls, and your staff.
Right, exactly.
You know, that was probably bang for the buck, as much as it, you know, cost in the man hours to input that.
There are people I never see in the office now that I would see 2 or 3 times a week that would come down to the mapping or would sit at the computer just to get the printout of the property record at our front counter. That I don't see.
No picture and no picture. Unless somebody attached one on some file somewhere. But I mean, the ability to get, you know, I looked at mine and I said, yep, that's what you got it at, and you know, I checked a few out around, and okay, it's fair. I guess I got the sense there's always this niggling doubt, even if you think that the assessor's in the ballpark. There's always this niggling doubt that, you know, because your kitchen's 50 years old, that, you know, you weren't being assessed fairly, and then your neighbors get talking, and sometimes so they find out that they should get a little redress from you.
Right, and that's when I say that there are times when you want to invite the assessor into your house, and that's for those individuals that haven't done any updating. Let's say there's a house in Dundee, 2 houses, both 2 stories, wood frame, 1-car detached garage, but one side an older couple lived. They put in a new kitchen in '69. They haven't pulled the shag carpet upstairs because the kids are gone and it's still in good shape, and they want to use the money for their retirement. Next door, same house, same size, is a young couple, both working, pull the carpet up, redo the hardwood floor, put in a brand new kitchen, put in a jacuzzi tub upstairs and make a master bath. I mean, here are two properties that look the same from the outside. And that's where you want, if you're the couple that haven't done the updating, or you've got a problem structurally with the house, you want to say, come on in and look. I mean, we're not at average condition for the neighborhood. We are too high in our opinion, and that's where, in those cases, we'll go along with the individual by doing an interior inspection.
But the ability to be able to do that yourself and not have to call an appraiser, or people just don't do it and just sort of hold this grudge, thinking the whole protesting process is so complex, and it begins with that complexity of finding comparable values or incomparable values, as the case may be. It really empowers people.
It does.
I mean, it's a good news, bad news.
It is.
But it's overall a good news. I mean, I saw people down there last year when you guys were first online, going down there with their little data and their little printouts, and I think they've really felt, some of them, not all, but some of them for the first time really felt like, win or lose, that they had gotten the information themselves and they were empowered by it. You know, that they were going to put it on. They didn't have to hire. They were part of the process.
And there are those people that go to the website and go up and down and say, well, he's got me assessed at the same as my neighbors.
And I've been to, Joni and John's house. And
right. It looks like we're in line, and gee, I didn't know that house sold for that much. And sometimes people don't keep up with what houses are selling
remember
for.
when people used to go through the newspaper and the house sales? And I know some people still do. But this busy day and age, I used to do it more. Just didn't. And plus, that print got smaller.
Well, I'm going to give you a tip. We're about ready to go live probably in the next 30 days with a sales search that you can put in your addition. You can put in Dundee Place, 2-story, and it'll bring up all the 2-story sales the last 3 years, and you can click and go to the property record card, but it'll show you the sale price per square foot. So you can look in there without clicking up and down the street or taking the different addresses. You can see what those sales are. And I think what people have to understand is, in any neighborhood, there's going to be a range of a price per square foot. We're not all the same per square foot because that's the way buyers don't buy it. They like the way a lot faces. They like the way a basement's finished.
The modern kitchen.
The modern kitchen.
Room to store that extra car.
An office
or
area.
Workshop. I know my husband.
Exactly. So. But this gives you a range to say, well, okay, I'm in the range. I know some people will come in and try to say, well, I'm going to pick the 3 low sales in my neighborhood and want to be comparable to them. But that's not my job. My job is to say, what are people paying for properties, and based on our records, and that's where the property record becomes very important, that it's accurate. And you can look at your house, and I mean, I've got calls from people who say, I've got 2 bedrooms, not 3. You've got me down for 2 bathrooms and I've only got 1.
Does that really happen? I mean,
it does.
All out and out inaccuracies?
There are some inaccuracies in the record, and that's another reason that they're on there. You can call and say, hey, that sketch on my house, I don't know where you took it, and if we took it from an old property record card and haven't physically been in your neighborhood yet, and it's wrong, let us know. We want to send somebody out and get it right.
Now, I know that you're very proud of your people that made this all possible, and but how are the other major metropolitan area counties? Have they come up to speed on this?
Yeah, I would say that, first of all, the Lancaster County and Pottawatomie County have had a website for a long time.
Right.
And
I wanted to
6 or 7 years.
credit.
So I mean, it's not that we're the pioneer. It's been available. So I'll say that different counties are in different degrees of having good records, and it probably goes back to when the county made the commitment to go forward and make sure that things were accurate and take advantage of technology.
Does the Turk board, do they look upon Omaha not as the kind of the bad stepchild now that you're a little more modern? Are they giving you a little more credibility, or are they just still holding you to to the flame, because we've always been considered sort of one of the problem children of the state. Not, because we do. In fact, we're held to a higher standard sometimes.
Exactly.
And in fact, this case this year, where they held up District 66 within a county, which is, I think, the first time that they've looked specifically at school district. And they said, you're this much shy of meeting that minimum 92 average valuation, 92% of valuation of everyone hitting that. And so we're going to, slap your hand again and do something. And you, at least, you said you were a little more savvy
Right.
this time around. But you did point out that this isn't being done across the state.
They've never looked at that number, and what had happened in District 66, the sales assessment ratio came in 91.44, and they would have rounded up at 91.5, and they picked out a school district, and they've never done that before. And first of all, tell me what the rules are. I mean, to have raised that, we could have done that easily to look at a couple more properties if we knew we were being graded there instead of on a county-wide basis. And then we were being held at a different standard. Sometimes, and you covered the legislature, it's a we-them type thing, the urban areas versus some of the rural areas.
When did you first notice that?
Well, I was aware of that, but I wasn't aware till I have to go down and stand in Lincoln, and that's part of it, I think.
But the fact that there were other school districts.
81 other school districts in the state of Nebraska that had a ratio that was below 91%.
Let alone 92%.
That weren't called in like we were.
Well, I think they probably knew at that point, since equalization is the key word in terms of what our Constitution requires, what our courts have required, to unequally single out that one out of 82, that would kind of nip them in the old bud in a chord. So okay, so you're going to go back in and you're going to. Did you catch District 66 up?
Well, that'll be this next year. Our numbers chronologically go down to the state March 20th of each year. We can't change any number. We meaning the assessor's office after that. County Board of Equalization can during
Those are the ones
protest.
they work with until the next March.
Right.
And that's,
so we'll have new numbers and that will be addressed. We're that close.
But the important thing is, I guess, is that they spur all counties on with whatever system they use that's fair to say, this year or any given year we could pick out by school districts, or we could pick out by, I don't know, divide the city into quadrants, and we could pick a quadrant.
Exactly, and that's the other areas they've looked at. Or you could pick it out because the state does statistics on ratios of year built. So you could pick out houses between 1930 and 1940, you're too low. I'm saying, well, wait a minute, how ridiculous are we going to work numbers?
I'm sure you get together once in a while with other county assessors. Don't you have some magical, mystical organization?
Yeah, there are regional assessor organizations.
What are the issues facing? I know our state is so property tax dependent that's why we're all a little sensitive. We're more than a little sensitive, and why different governmental subdivisions are, and one state doesn't want to, or one county doesn't out west that's having a really hard time, and property values are going down, doesn't want to pay more than it can, individuals can pay or should pay. But what are some of the things that different states that have little different tax systems have in common? What are the issues facing assessors and people who value property across maybe the area here, the region?
I think the biggest issue, and not only in Nebraska but other states, is that the assessor is viewed as the tax man. You make my taxes go up, and that's not the case. Government spending makes taxes go up. And whenever I talk to a neighborhood group, I open up usually with good news. I'm here to announce that next year I'm lowering all valuations in Douglas County 25%. And I'll get a few applause, and I'll get, so what? Somebody will yell out, and I'll say, what do you think's going to happen to your taxes?
They'll just adjust the mill levy to bring in the same amount of money.
And then somebody's astute and says, they're still going to go up. And I say, yes, that's right. So that's where we have to look at fairness, I think, is the biggest issue that we have to look at.
In reality, though, it wouldn't make any difference if we were at 97% evenly across the board, Or if we were at 25%, if the budgets of the governmental subdivisions, and the state law allows them to set a mill levy accordingly, then we will all equally pay that minuscule percentage that we all pay that seems
Exactly.
like a fortune. So
Exactly.
equalization really is the key, though. So the
Right.
state isn't a nutsoid case,
No.
trying to make sure whatever by any means necessary, but that county assessors stay on top of it.
I think the other thing is you know, we're such a small state population-wise that we don't have a lot of other forms of taxation that we can bring in, and we've chosen to use property tax for schools, and they take 60 cents of every dollar. So you know, that becomes something, and there other states will have a higher sales tax or a higher income tax. We
But
in
at
our
least
state-
if somebody buys a Lexus in another state, it is very clear and concise that they will be paying whatever percentage is
Right.
prescribed. So that whether you buy a Lexus or a pack of gum, you will pay. So it's easy to be crystal clear on that. But the concept is that we be fair and equal.
Exactly.
I know it's a never-ending battle, but besides the technology, what's making it easier to achieve a confidence that we are being taxed equally to our neighbor based on the kind of property we own?
I think just being open and available gives us that sense of fairness and should give us a little more confidence. I mean, I get a lot of good comments too. I mean, there are a lot of negative things, you son of a gun, you raise my taxes. But I'll get calls from people where I'll have people drop notes, your appraiser was here, or I talked to the gal that works in your mapping section, or your homestead program for the elderly, you know, and I was received very well. And I appreciate that, and I want to point this person out. So I get a lot of feedback, and that's our job, is to be taxpayer friendly. We work for the taxpayer.
Okay, we've got less than a minute. You mentioned helping with the homestead exemption or the homestead program. What are some of the hidden things that you do? Because people only think of you as the tax man and you're the man that raises their bill. What are some of the other things that I might be able to do to help my mother, or that I need to know what you do?
Right. The homestead program, if you're over 65, there's an income cap on it. It's about $30,000 for married couple, $26,000
You can
for
find
single.
out that at the assessor's office. Help through that.
444-7060.
Or your local county assessor. Anything
Or
else?
your local county
Maps, all kinds of things.
Maps are available on the internet and from our office.
So you can go to the internet to find out who the assessor is, what he really does besides raise your taxes.
Right.
Roger, I want to thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Carol.
We've been showing the website for the county assessor's office. So do a search, Douglas County Assessor. That should just pop right up. And want to remind you, our archive shows, including this one, can be seen on unotv.unomaha.edu. We're pretty computer savvy, too. Thanks, Roger, for being with us.
Thank you, Carol.
Join us next week on Consider This.